All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the March 7th, 2022 Grants Pass City Council Workshop. And I haven't heard from DJ this morning, so I'm going to assume he's absent at this point, unless he calls in. We have a series of updates from some of our kind of economic development business partners, and first up is the Chamber of Commerce. So please welcome Josie Malloy. Make sure your mic's on over there, Josie.
Oh yeah. There, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
All right. Good morning. Thank you for having me to give an update. Today I am mostly going to talk about the Visitor Center and then also some different functions happening with the Chamber of Commerce. So just to recap, our beautiful visitor center, it's getting really nice and green, and we've been having lots of different people visiting. So an exciting thing that has been kind of the buzz around town, of course, I'm sure you've seen in the Daily Courier, is that the Caveman twin has actually arrived in Grants Pass. So of course, in the one picture you can see he still needs some work in that picture, and he came up and visited the visitor center, and they got a picture with both cavemen. And then we had the amazing opportunity for a greeters meeting to actually showcase the renovation process of the twin. So you'll see the artist here, and it's actually been done at Applin's Auto Body. So it's really cool to see some different local businesses partnering with them to renovate him, and then we'll see where he ends up. But some exciting tourist things happening for us. So I do like to share the different numbers of visitors that's been coming up to the North Visitor Center. I do want to go back to 2019 though, because these were our usual numbers, because 2020 and 2021 have just been roller coasters with numbers. You'll see them all over the place. Usually we have about 7,500 that come, and these are purely from outside Grants Pass coming in as tourists, up to 4,000 phone calls looking for different things to do, planning vacations. And we'll send up to 1,000 relocation and visitor packets. And these are the ones that we actually mail out. We get lots of phone calls or emails that we send out, doing it electronically rather than sending in the snail mail. And we get over 2 million views on our website, grantspasschamber.org, and our community calendar, which basically has every event happening in Josephine County, and people can post anything for free on there. We also usually do packets for different conferences coming to our community. On average, we do about 1,000 of those, and we put in all kinds of different tourist information, but also local business coupons and goodies. And then, of course, we get tons of locals that call us for different information or come in to stop in and say hi. So I think the last time I came to present was in September, right before I went out on maternity leave. So I wanted to give a whole snapshot of the numbers from January to December. As you can see, at the beginning of the year in 2021, we were pretty low on visitors because at that time, COVID was pretty prevalent in our area. And as you can see, we started ramping up in the summer, and then we started going back down again. And this is really depending what's happening with COVID. And people just started traveling completely differently. We have seen actually a lot more younger people come in lately, which is great. And we're always shocked. We do a printed map, and it still continues to be so popular. We always reevaluate that if people really do still take a physical map, and we are almost completely out of them, and we print 10,000 every year. And I did talk to the employees down at the Downtown Welcome Center, and they said it's probably the popular thing is that map. So it's still shocking that people use that physical map. And then I did want to share what we're seeing for 2022. January actually looked pretty good compared to 2020. I think in 2020 we said 73. So we're getting there. We're just hoping that this continues to be, that we're seeing a lot more in-person visitors. We really aren't seeing as many relocation and vacation packets being mailed out though. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but we know everyone's relocating here. So I think they're just finding lots of information online, and we do have every publication that we do is on our website electronically, because we know that's still popular. Before I go into the new volunteer though, I did want to talk about some issues that we're seeing up at the visitor center, and I've talked to the chief of police about this too. We are seeing so much traffic with transients, and I don't know if you've been up at the north end of town, but right by that Circle K, we have people that are basically living out of their cars. That whole parking lot has tons of vehicles, and unfortunately, lots of that traffic is coming onto our lawn, and we're seeing them go back and forth between that parking lot and the travel lodge. So we're seeing, we've been hit by graffiti, we've had them mess with our wiring, all kinds of things. So we've actually increased our security at night, because most of that is happening at night, and we are gonna get a camera system. We've actually never had one up there, but it's just gotten so bad. So we will be installing a camera system. So things are happening with our volunteers. They're all back in person, and we were very excited to add Maddie Ward. She actually started with us in October, and as you can see, she's a millennial, so we're getting a nice diversity with our volunteers. And she grew up in the Rogue Valley, so she's very knowledgeable about our area. She loves to organize, watch movies, and she also volunteers at her church and then, of course, at the chamber. And right now we have 15 volunteers. They're all very active, and they put in over 5,000 hours a year doing volunteer work at the North Visitor Center. And we actually have a volunteer in the audience, Dean, comes in and volunteers every Monday morning. So for some upcoming activities, we're gonna start doing different in-person tours with our volunteers. We'll be doing a downtown tour with our local merchants on March 30th, and we'll be going to different stores downtown, meeting with the owners, learning about their business, and then they're gonna give us some promotional material that they'll be able to read over and take back with them to the North Visitor Center. And we are gonna finally do our wine tasting and tour of Troon, probably in April. We actually had it scheduled last year, but because of COVID, we did cancel that. And then we'll be doing education series with them later in the year, so they are completely trained and ready when our tourist season gets really busy in the summer. And then we're gonna try to add some more different on-site tours, because we kind of got behind because of COVID. And our volunteers love to actually go out and meet in person and tour the facilities. And as you can see in this picture, we went up to Wolf Creek and did a whole tour and learned about the ghost hauntings and everything there. So any questions, I guess, about the Visitor Center before I get into the chamber functions? Or do you want to wait till the end?
Do you have any questions, Council?
Okay, perfect, thank you. So we have been very, very busy as our awards banquet is coming up March 11th. This is in person, and we are completely sold out. We will be honoring all of our businesses, volunteers, board members, committee members, and then giving away the business awards. And we are very excited. We have a few counselors that will be attending, so thank you so much. Our business community is just so excited to celebrate finally. And then we are bringing back Wine Stroll. which is downtown in our historic district. It'll be May 7th. We'll be bringing in our local wineries throughout Josephine County and partnering with local restaurants. So if you buy a ticket, you'll have about 16 different stops, and you can really get a showcase of everything Josephine County has to offer in wine and food. It's very popular. We sell about 500 tickets every year, and if you want a ticket, you better buy it quick because it will be sold out. And then we'll come back in October to do the tap walk. Same type of format, it'll just be with our local breweries. A lot of fun. And then finally, Concerts in the Park is scheduled for June and July, and we're gonna do it in Riverside Park again, and we're very excited. We have all the bands signed up. We're bringing back the bands that were supposed to play in 2020, so we're excited to kick that off and bring everyone together for a free concert series. And then Lemonade Day will come up August 5th. This is where we work with middle school children to teach them how to own and operate their first business, which would be a lemonade stand. This was very popular. We had 45 kids participate last year, and this year we are hoping to get about 200. And this will really teach kids, how to deal with money, interact with people, and learn about everything that comes with owning your business. We're partnering with the Boys and Girls Club and YMCA, and then the school districts to bring that. We will be doing our new publications. We're in the process of right now putting this all together. They will be printed right before Boatnik. So we'll do our map. We partner with the Daily Courier on that. And then our profile, which is basically business resources and a relocation guide. And we partner with Mount Angel Publishing to do that. And the cool thing about the profile is we partner with lots of our economic development partners like Soretti, SBDC, Travel Grants Pass, and even the city will also be able to contribute information in there. So it'll really showcase all the different partners we work with. And this one is very popular. We have it printed. I think we do 15,000 copies. We hand them out throughout the year, and then it's electronic format too. And these are just some pictures of all the fun activities. Despite COVID, we were still able to do a lot of fun things, from Lemonade Day to ribbon cuttings, a wine stroll. Our Young Professionals Network is still going strong. They did a team building exercise at Club Northwest. And then we also did the window display contest downtown, which was very popular to really get people out there to shop local and support our businesses, because last year was rough for a lot of the small businesses. And this year we have had so many different ribbon cuttings, as there is a lot of things happening in our community. We're seeing a lot of new businesses open, expansions, relocation, and it's just exciting. As you'll see, we have Packer Plant Company. They just moved in downtown. We have Project Youth Plus. They just opened in their new building. Habitat for Humanity finally got a much better location, so they'll actually be visible. And they have a project coming up this summer. And then the Kirby building, the Boys and Girls Club took that over. So exciting things happening. And then just a reminder, we did get a brand new website. It's beautiful. We feature lots of local photographers, including Kate Battles. And we've actually partnered with her to have new merchandise in the North Visitor Center too. Beautiful postcards. We're getting shirts and sweatshirts just so when people leave, they're bringing Grants Pass with them. So it'll continue to promote our community. And I encourage you to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. We share lots of different things happening in the business community. And that's my presentation. Just a reminder, we're here, to help Grants Pass grow and prosper, and we want people to continue living here and visiting here. Any questions?
Thank you, Josie. Are there any questions?
All right, thank you. And I will get you, we just released our newsletter. I'll make sure you guys get printed copies. There is a great Q&A on the construction excise tax. A big thank you to Brad Clark. He helped us put that together. And we are still working on the roundtable. I'll be in touch soon on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sarah?
Yeah.
Could I ask a question of staff regarding the presentation?
Yeah.
It was about, Josie brought up concerts in the park, and I know last year we had talked about a band shell, and I was just wondering if we had status on that?
So we have been looking at the electrical and the best way to move electrical to where that band shell will go. There's also been a little bit of back and forth in terms of, you know, the location for it. As you know, historically, it's always been closer to the river side. That is, in terms of new development, you know, there's some potential flood issues there with flooding, so we are still going back and forth on that in terms of getting a site plan, but we should have, you know, a recommended site plan that has the location as well as the electrical to council fairly soon.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have a Small Business Development Center update. Hello, Ruth.
Greetings. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, it's certainly an honor to be here, Mayor and Council, staff and visitors. I have been a member of the Grants Pass community now for a year. Oregon much longer than that. And every day I find an inspiration with how many partnerships and how visionary our leaders are, and I thank you for your leadership. It's also an honor to be here with my partners in building business and the economy. Josie and Colleen serve on the CEDC committee with Colleen and have really enjoyed getting to know Brad better and Donna Rupp, who are, and of course we miss Susan. Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. If you want to take your mask off so we can hear you better, you're welcome to, but you don't have to. It's up to you.
Okay. Well, I think I'll take it off. All right, so push the button. Who are we? What do we offer? And why? That's what I'd like to present today. Many people are surprised when I tell them that I work for the Small Business Development Center, and we are located and work for Rogue Community College. Rogue Community College has been a partner with Oregon SBDC Network for decades now, and I'm very grateful for that partnership. Okay, this is where I bombard you with 48 charts until you agree with me. Sorry that sort of got thrown in there for some rotary humor recently. Hopefully not 48 charts. I am going to share a few stats with you. Since we were founded in 1984, we've served 12,000 small businesses. Now, obviously, some of those have come and gone, and 50,000 hours of advising. This is the primary service that we offer, is one-on-one confidential advising. We also offer training events, and we've held 3,000 events during those many years, and lots of attendees. One of the things we say sometimes, if you are stuck with your debt if you can't budget. Thank you for supporting small businesses. Demand for our services has been on the rise in recent years. And I want to especially say thank you to the council and staff for being good partners with the SBDC for many years. Helen Keller said, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much, and I truly believe that Partnerships really are driving the recovery from the pandemic and continued growth here in Grants Pass. So pandemic response, we saw all kinds of response from small businesses. Here's an example of one. The motion has been made and seconded that we stick our heads in the sand. Those businesses who did not change during the pandemic may not have made it, and eventually all of us were forced to change in order to adapt, and boy have we. During the pandemic, all of our classes shut down. We were no longer able to meet with people in person, so we switched to Zoom and phone advising, and we had a 20% increase, the largest in our history in 2020 for support. We provided 3,000 hours of support over the last 2 years and helped small businesses invest millions and secure funding for capital expansions. Also, the Paycheck Protection loans and the EIDL and the grants that the city provided, as well as Josephine County. So we called it crisis response support. Small business development centers have been doing this for many years, and many of our advisors went through some terrible times. 2008 banking crisis, the 9/11, the Great Recession. So we've seen how you really have to take a look at changing the way you do business during these stressful times. So raise your hand, how many of you have founded a business or managed people? Tackled business bookkeeping, one of our favorite things to do. If you've written a business plan or a marketing plan, been in charge of those. Navigated government regulations. Now I started to list what kind of government regulations, and it's pretty much all of them. Or asked for a business loan. Anybody had to go through that process, or conducted market research to look at who your customers are and what they're doing and how to reach them. Those are things that we help people with all day long at the Small Business Development Center. So I have continued to be amazed at our center. There are 20 centers across Oregon, and Rogue is just one of them. The majority of those are located at community colleges, and our center continues to be amongst the top centers in Oregon. We were second in documenting our clients' annual sales increases, capital investments, number of clients served and jobs supported, and very high also in how many hours we invest with our clients. Now, 40,000 people compared to 800,000 in the Portland metro and very large areas. You can be proud that your Small Business Development Center is a high performer, even though we faced some really serious challenges the last 2 years. We offer services for every stage of a business. If it's an idea you have, we'd love to chat with you about that. If you're ready to launch or you already have, if you want to expand your business or retool for stressful, difficult times, or if you're ready to sell your business, those are all areas of expertise that our advisors have. I put up here the 4 focus areas that we are committed to in our strategic plan, and those are enhancing our services, supporting the underrepresented, building partnerships, and improving our performance. And we work very hard to commit to those focus areas. So the secret to change is to focus all your energy, not fighting the old, but on building the new. And that is from Socrates many, many years ago. And change is inevitable. Last year, facing challenges during the pandemic as I started my position here and relocating our offices and trying to figure out how do we improve our services for small businesses. it really occurred to me that every day I can expect some kind of change. And I think that change is going to continue on into the future. So we have a strict confidentiality policy. However, we have a provision for getting permission from our clients to tell their story, and Midori gave us permission. She came to us in 2017, and she is very proud of her Japanese heritage and cuisine, and she had the dream of opening, selling her own food products. And we recommended that she sign up for our Start Smart, Start Your Business Smart class. She participated in that. We also have Kenny Hauk is an advisor with us who is very knowledgeable in how to access USDA regulations, policies. There are all kinds of policies for packaging and food safety, et cetera. And earlier, Josie mentioned the Kirby building that recently had a grand opening. Rogue Community College transferred that building to the Boys and Girls Club. And we are thrilled that the Boys and Girls Club has committed to having our offices and services continue in the Illinois Valley, located there at the building. There is a commercial kitchen that is available for a very low cost, and we have many clients who don't have the funding to invest in, I mean, one of the most expensive things is, you know, just the hood that goes over a commercial stove, and the various resources are there because of partnerships. Rogue Community College invested in building that commercial kitchen and received grants and funding to expand it over the years. We also worked with Midori on writing her business plan. She signed up for something called the Matched Savings Program, an individual development account. And if you save up to $1,000, CASA of Oregon will match that at $5 to $8 per dollar at the end of your savings period. So it's an amazing program that our center is going to continue to carry for the next year, I hope. And then she's launched her product. So look for her chickpea miso. Somebody asked me what miso is. I should learn what miso is. I think I know what miso is. Okay, another pandemic response, still similar to the other. What if we don't change at all and something magical happens? Probably not going to work. We were hoping that you could work from work today. I'm hearing that, and I personally had an adjustment going back to work after starting my job on Zoom. And I'm still meeting people in person. This morning I met somebody who I only knew in this little box on my laptop. And so we're here for businesses as we emerge and find new ways to recover from the pandemic. So it looks like we have a very large team, and we do. The majority of our advisors are, well, all of our advisors are part-time. They are retired or semi-retired and have owned their own business. Lots of expertise there, and as I mentioned, we do have them located both here in Grants Pass and in the Illinois Valley. So here's some of the things that our advisors have said. Our clients know they've made a friend who always has their best interest at heart. I enjoy assisting individuals in successfully acquiring funds to empower the growth and success of their business. My passion is to help launch new entrepreneurs on a path that will allow them to enjoy the same satisfaction and benefits I have experienced with my own small business over the years. My favorite part is knowing that we provide services, coaching, and expertise that enables our clients to achieve lifelong dreams and perform at their highest level. Through the SBDC, I continue following my passion for helping small business owners in whatever way possible. So I may be laying it on a little thick here with how rewarding it is. You will not find this gentleman at an SBDC. Really, I'm fine. It was just a fleeting sense of purpose. I'm sure it'll pass. We don't feel that way. We're passionate about what we do, and the fact that we can offer advising free of charge and totally confidential is it's a really rewarding way of life. So we are looking for new advisors. We've had some people retire. We also want to expand our services, and the CCB, Construction Contractors Board, we have lots of people wanting to open their own business in some area of construction, and we're looking for someone to help teach classes and advise people. We also have a retiring advisor who spends all their time helping people start a business. So we're looking for someone there. Bookkeeping and payroll is always a high demand for classes and instruction. And digital marketing, I really believe that, you know, your website is now maybe like your business card used to be. It's a start, but there are something over 7 billion people in the world. There are 1.9 billion websites. So how on earth are you going to set yourself apart from others? And social media is also a very important way. So we're looking for an instructor to help us help our businesses get found on the World Wide Web. So Mike and Jody Appland also came to us several years ago. Again, they've given us permission to mention their work with us. And they started in the Small Business Management Program. Most of our classes are a couple of hours, over 2 or 3 days at the most. The SBM, Small Business Management, is a 9-month intensive training. And with Mike and Jody, they gave us feedback that we helped them with look at their financial performance. We helped them with some ideas on improving employee performance and employee satisfaction. We also looked for operational efficiencies and growth strategies. So say thank you to them when you see them. Did I hear Caveman, the twin, is there? Across the state, we also have some statewide services that we can access for our clients. Our Global Trade Center, increasingly, if you can ship your products overseas, that market is really in a fast-growing pace, and we can help connect you with advisors and grants on how to do that. We have, of course, the Capital Access team. We're lucky to have 2 advisors who are retired bankers on our team that can help you prepare for and gain a loan. Cybersecurity, more and more important every day. Please use a long password. Please don't use your dog or your daughter's name. Don't use it on the same site everywhere. You know, just some simple tips on how to protect yourself against cyber attack. We also have a Latino outreach program, and we're wanting to build that program in the coming year. Government contracting. If you want to do business with the government, we have people who can help you with that. Or if you want to conduct some market research and find out what's going on in your industry, this is a free service. We can pull from various different databases to look at what's happening in your industry or with your competitors' industries. So we're on the campus now of along the Redwood Highway. Rogue Community College was gracious enough when the time came to sell the downtown building to open up 2 beautiful buildings on the campus. We are scheduling appointments, and they are by appointment only. Since we have part-time people, we have to be able to register people for the confidential advising. And that's about it, who we are, what we do, and why we do it. I also want to take every opportunity to say thank you to the Grants Pass City Council for supporting small business. Businesses drive our economy. People who have jobs and spend their funding in the community builds economic strength for all of us. So, building Oregon's best business, that's our mission.
Thank you, Ruth. Council, do you have any questions? Go ahead, Rob.
Just brief comments. So on your definition of miso, it's a fermented, typically soybean paste, although Midori uses garbanzo beans, chickpeas instead. Really rich source of probiotics and enzymes. And traditional breakfast in Japan includes miso soup. Very definitely correlated with reduced levels of heart disease and many different cancers. And delicious, if I didn't add that. So
Cool.
anyway, you can take that to your next presentation.
Thank you.
Making me hungry here.
And one more thing, we do carry Midori's chickpea miso.
All right, all
have for a
right.
couple
This
months.
shuts you down,
No, we
Rob.
have, we do.
Somebody turn off his mic.
No, it's true. It's a good product. I don't expect you guys to come in and buy it, but it's a good product.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you for supporting local business.
Yeah, never miss an opportunity to market the business there. Next up, we have So Ready and Colleen Padilla.
Well, good hello. I don't have a PowerPoint, but I realize that from here I can see all of you, so I'm going to stand here. My good hello, I just share that last week I was in a meeting and I didn't remember if it was morning or afternoon or what, and it just came out as good hello. So that's my new, that's my new greeting, good hello. Colleen Padilla, I'm the executive director for So Ready. And that may be new to a few counselors who I've not really been able to interface with yet, but that's Southern Oregon Regional Economic Development. And you may know this, but I'm going to repeat it, and that is that the city of Grants Pass is one of our founding fathers. It goes back to 1987 when you, along with the city of Medford and both counties, created us as the Regional Economic Development Agency for the region. And so we do some things that are similar, but really we partner, and I want to thank my colleagues Ruth and Josie for their excellent presentations, because that is really what we're about, is coordinating efforts to support our business community. And for us, it just means that we actually serve 15 jurisdictions throughout the region, which includes Little Butte Falls, which I was at a forest chat on Saturday up there. You may know that, that little town, I just have to share this with you, is that there are 450 people. Our smallest jurisdiction purchased 400 acres of forest land around their little town. And they have some great things planned. So watch them to see how they do this, about forest sustainability and resiliency and a whole bunch of other things. And we're involved in that also. So again, I don't have a PowerPoint, but I really like to come to some of these things more with a conversational tone, and I hope that you appreciate that also. But we have something called the One Rogue Valley Strategy, which is really our comprehensive economic development strategy. I'm just on number 1 on the packet that you gave. That started in 2020, July 2020. It's a 5-year plan. We've got lots of initiatives in there. Right now, what we're doing is really evaluating priorities again, because things keep changing, right? And we're all about moving forward through change. And so we're identifying those priorities and also seeing how much staff capacity we have to carry out certain things. Also, you'll probably appreciate this about infrastructure. We realized that we needed to fix some things kind of in our internal infrastructure with our database system and our website so that we can better track and create sort of a dashboard of metrics that says, here's what we've done in this category. So we had to do some of that And you'll see better dashboards come out soon. There are some things on our website, but next time I come back to you, I'm hopeful to have a better dashboard that tells you what we've done there. The next item, number 2, this is one of the things that SoReady really differentiates SoReady from some of our partners, is that we are the agency in the region. If there's a recruitment lead, someone interested in being our region, they're going to call us as the economic development agency. In most cases, if they're looking at the region, if they know they want to be in Grants Pass, historically they would have called Susan C. Ryder or maybe Brad now as we go forward, but we're a partner in that. So we actually have several active leads right now. You'll see that there's 4 or 5 of them that are very strong. Most of them come to us directly or through a partner, and then some of them come to us through Business Oregon, which is the state's economic development agency. So right now, we know that there's 2 of these 4 to 5 that have purchase agreements for property. Now, it happens to be in White City, but it's still going to be important for you, and I'll tell you that in just a minute. $35 to $40 million in new investment for all these projects if they were all to happen. 150 to 200 jobs at build out. And you'll see that I've categorized them. 2 are food manufacturing, bioscience, a secondary wood products company, and a health supplements company. And I also shared that a couple of those are also interested in your region. So we bring them all the data for whatever community they need, and then we introduce them to the right people in the community that they're interested in. So, and our goal is not to point them to any particular community. They tell us what they need, and then we say whether that's going to work in that community. You're probably not going to build a 100,000 square foot manufacturing facility right now in Grants Pass, because you may not have the space for it right now. So there's those types of conversations we have. We tell them about what is good about Southern Oregon? What are the workers' compensation ratings? How do our energy rates compare to other locations they may be considering? Because we're not always the only region or even the only state that they may be considering. So that's our goal to do that. We have a person on staff right now that's helping me with those relocation leads. I've done those for a long time. I've been with us already 20 years. And he's helping learn how to do that. And just today we're having a conversation about setting up a pre-application meeting for a particular company, or really drilling down to where is that sewer line exactly for that property. Those are the sort of technical assistant things we do behind the scenes. And I mentioned that we do continue to respond to Business Oregon leads. But I want to go back to that statement about why is it important to Grants Pass if we recruit a business elsewhere in our region. And that has to do with workforce. So the workforce is going all over the area. There are some stats. It's always a couple years behind, but I just received that from our regional economist, Guy Tower with the employment department. So here's the number. In the workforce that exists in Josephine County, just the working population, about 19% of that population commutes to Jackson County for their primary job. That's about 4,000 people. Now, right now, maybe they're not actually physically commuting, but their primary job is still based, that's where their payroll comes from, in Jackson County. Conversely, in Jackson County, and this is 2 years data, this comes from, I believe, still 2019. It's all gathered through employment records, quarterly reports with the employment department. But conversely, in Jackson County, about 5.2% of that workforce commutes to Josephine County, or their primary job is with a company that's based in Josephine County. And that's about 5,000 people coming in this direction. So if you've been on the freeway in those commute times, that might be who you're seeing going back and forth. So in Oregon too, because we are one of the few states in the nation that does not have a sales tax, there's no tax gain really for you from sales tax. There may be for property tax one day, but the workforce is going everywhere. And so that's why I just share that a win anywhere in our region is a win for the entire region when it comes to recruitment projects and expansion projects. So I just wanted to share that with you. We also operate a revolving loan fund. We have done that since 1994. those are federal dollars. They've come from the USDA or the EDA, which is the part of the Department of Commerce. We have lots of money to lend right now. We have over $3 million in cash assets because what we've seen in the last couple of years, a lot of companies received idle loans or other things, and now it's a good time for them to pay off what is a higher risk loan with higher interest rates. So we've seen a lot of payoffs. And that's actually presenting for us a fairly good opportunity, and that is that we are well positioned to pay off a couple of USDA loans, because those were loans that we carried for a while, almost 30 years. And what that will do is that the USDA loans are largely only available, they're restricted to lend into rural communities. A few years ago, you no longer were considered rural. And so we have some restrictions that come from the federal government on where we can do things. And so the board, it's already board of directors, of which Josie is on that board, and so is Brad, replacing Susan, and currently Mayor Bristol, is considering paying those off. It's a very low interest rate for us, but now is the time because we have the cash assets, and when we do that, as soon as we just clarify on a couple things, it basically does what we call defederalize the dollars. So it becomes our money. They've already revolved around. So then we become more flexible in how we can use those funds, still mostly for loans, but it could be for some other high priority projects. So we see that as an opportunity to really flex right now and maybe be more creative in helping businesses. I'm on number 4, which is about connecting again. So glad that we're going to be connecting again. And I want to talk to you about a SOBC change-up. And you have a flyer that looks like this in your packet. It's not complete, still draft, but for 17 years, we had something called the Southern Oregon Business Conference, which was in Medford, because that's where we had a large enough venue to hold 250 to 300 people. And then, of course, we've had to change that up. But we're all about moving forward through the change, and so we've kind of come up with a creative solution to that. We have smaller events that are going to happen in April, in August, and in October, all based on a different industry. One is development, one is hospitality, and the other is manufacturing. And so we're doing some videography series of keynote speakers talking about how they have moved forward through change. And then for each one of those, we have 2 watch parties, once in Josephine County, once in Jackson County. And so on this flyer, you'll see that in April, we're going to be here at Weekend Brewing Company, April 27th. And when we're in Jackson County, we're going to be in Ashland. They have a new co-working space there. So not all the dates are firm yet, but I do want to point out that the Taprock Thomason Hospitality Group is one of our keynote speakers that will be in October, when we really talk about how did the hospitality industry, who was most impacted through our pandemic, keep moving forward through change. So we'll have more details on that soon, but we're looking forward to that. So instead of one big event, 250 to 300 people, we actually have 6 smaller events that will be 40 to 50 people. And the other benefit of it is we get to move around so that you could go see somewhere new. So we're hoping that we'll have a good portion of people that come over in April to Weekend Brewing Company, for example. Moving on to number 5, Regional Chambers of Commerce. We're so appreciative of you, Josie, and just her coordination with us. In fact, earlier this year, we've had a couple of meetings where it became apparent to us that we could do so much better cooperating. Not that we didn't cooperating, but being more coordinated and less duplicative. So Sorority is facilitating a once-a-month meeting with all of our chambers, which includes the Illinois Valley, Grants Pass, Ashland, and Medford, just to really talk shop and figure out how do we do better, less duplication, coordinate services, tackle regional problems that may exist. How are we going to do that? So we've started to do that. Number 6, on the Regional Innovation Hub, there's an opportunity right now with the Business Oregon to create a regional innovation hub. It's a planning grant and then possible implementation. So we're working on that with our SBDCs, one of our other wonderful partners, both SBDCs. We have 2 of them in our region. Libraries and others, Business Oregon, and we're going to be having a deeper conversation about that soon later this week, March 11th. So we don't know what that means yet, but we're exploring it because, as you heard Ruth talk about, and Josie, there are a lot of companies that this is an opportunity for them to start up. Some of them are in the retail service sector, which is not in our purview, but some of them are on the other side of the equation, which we call traded sector. Most of their business is outside the region. So that's why we're going to partner and see what could that mean for our region and what does that look like. We don't know yet, but that's happening. The coordination between many partners is paramount for all of us, I believe. Number 7, we are very pleased to say that we're going to have an annual meeting this year. Typically, we move that around, and in Josephine County, we still have some challenges with larger venues. And so 3 previous times we've been here in Grants Pass, we just make it simple. We just take the jet boats down to the Hellgate Lodge, and that's what we're doing again this year. It's going to be a little bit different, but we do have 3 boats reserved. The date is June 30th, and we'll take the jet boats down and enjoy a meal, and we'll have a kind of a pre-reception at the Tap Rock where you can mingle and learn more of the programmatic things of what Sorority has done in the past year. Flipping to the back page of my report, I'm almost done here, but Southern Oregon Edge business profiles. So you have 2 of them in your packet. One is Weekend Brew Beer Company, and the other is the Grange Co-op. Those are the most recent ones that we've done. We have nearly 60 of those on our website. And you may be thinking, well, why is that so important? We created those back in 2012 in response to recruitment leads. When a company comes in, the number one most important thing for them is, will I find qualified workforce here? And kind of associated with that is who else is doing business here and why. And so they want to know about who else might have a potential workforce. Unfortunately, they all poach. Everybody poaches to some degree. But also, we want to know who else is doing business. What makes our company, what makes our region so vital? You know, what makes the economy tick? So we've done those for many, many years. And then just a few years ago, when we began really understanding pre-pandemic how important the workforce is, just like the companies were asking, how do the future workforce students even know about us? And so these are also paired up with other programs which have just been on hold for a period of time to really communicate to students and educators at our industry tours and other places, ways that we've done this before, what jobs exist here, because there are really great jobs here. You just may not see the big billboard that says Harry and David or Lithia or, you know, timber products, something like that. There's a lot of great opportunities. So we take it upon ourselves to really pull those stories out and promote local businesses. So the next one coming up, I believe the next one to be published in the future is actually Playcraft in Merlin. Number 9, EDA CARES Act. I'm not sure if I spoke to you about this the last time I actually presented or not, but I will just give you an update here. When the pandemic happened, the EDA, who's one of our federal partners that gives Sorority a planning grant every year just to maintain basic operations, they also passed through to us another grant, which was $400,000 over 2 years. We did not keep that mostly for ourselves. We passed 79% of it through to other partners, including what you see listed here. We did a grant, a sub-grant to the Rogue Retreat Urban Campground, which was developing at that point in Medford. We also did a tourism campaign with all the destination marketing organizations. That campaign is coming out in April. So they received some funds. It had to be a regional effort. Everything we do is regional in scope. So all 3 DMOs and Travel Southern Oregon are working together on that, along with the Rogue Valley International Airport on a campaign to attract people here for the wine and culinary tourism. We did several small city placemaking grants to the really small communities for things like Cave Junction is putting in some of their alert wildfire systems. Gold Hill is doing the same. Rogue River, I'm trying to remember what Rogue River did, but it was all kind of different. Placemaking being, what can we do to help our community and its livability and quality of life? So all these things had to be connected to the pandemic in some way or another. The city of Jacksonville, for example, implemented a system to help them with virtual meetings because so many of us could not meet in person. So it's a variety. And then the business diversification study in Ashland, while it says Ashland and they're leading that charge, it really is about tourism dependent communities like Ashland, of course, because they have Shakespeare and cabaret and all the performing arts, as does Britt and Jacksonville, and you have some here too. So they're leading a diversification study that would be shared with multiple communities to say, what can we do in a time such as a pandemic or whatever the next world event may be that's going to throw our economy into turmoil. So that's what's happening. All those dollars have to be used at the end of June. The balance of that we use to help with our staff capacity. We are 6 people doing this work. And that's about where it's best over the years, is about 6 people. The last item, just to share what's going on in the wake of the devastating fires that we had mostly in Jackson County and other counties in the state. We hired someone under an EDA grant to be a fire resiliency coordinator. He's doing that work. And then this month, we're going to open up a portal for some business grants to those businesses that were impacted by the fire. They could have lost the whole facility, or they just lost their entire market, which is the case in Phoenix. A lot of homes were gone, and so the entire market for a restaurant, for example, was gone. I don't know of any businesses in Josephine County, but if there were one that were impacted by the Slater fire, they would also be an applicant, or the Open Chain in the Butte Falls, Eagle Point area. They could also apply for this. It's not a lot of money. We're just raising it from our members. It's about $100,000, but is it going to make them whole? Absolutely not. Does it say to them, you're important to us, we want you to stay and thrive? Yes, and so that's what we're trying to do. And then important for all of you to just be on the lookout for this. We're going to be bringing back what we used to do as the Mayor's Crown Dinner. And so Mayor Bristol, you'd be invited. What we did is we invited all the highest elected officials from every community, all 15 jurisdictions, so that's commissioners. We bring people together just to talk about unifying measures, best practices, what can we work on together, because we're all a little bit too small to get the attention of outside companies for recruitment and things like that. And there's always room to work better together. So we're going to plan one of those. We believe it will be May, and it will probably be in either Phoenix or Talent in the primary burn scar area. That's all I have today. I would just love any questions or comments if you have one.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions? Brian?
Thank you, Colleen.
You're welcome.
And thank you for all of you for being here today. I'm not sure exactly this, I guess it's a question for all 3 of you, if any of you want to answer it, but I think the age we're living in now, there's been a little bit of a transition as far as, typically we're looking to start and grow new businesses, and right now we're really seeing an issue with existing businesses being able to hire enough staff and qualified staff to run the businesses they currently have. So I know we have that issue at the city, and it's not just in the Rogue Valley, it's everywhere. So
True.
I don't know if that's something that is something that you're trying to address or have ideas on, or anything that that you might be able to share on that front.
Well, I think I could speak for both of our partners. It's on our radar. We know it exists. There's no easy answers necessarily, except to maybe help businesses operate better and leaner with what they have until things open up again. That's where the good budgeting comes in and the good business plan. I don't want to speak for both of you, but I think that's part of it in this time. We just have to help businesses navigate better and be leaner if possible. And that could be many things. Come on up.
Thank you. Totally agree with Colleen. As you might imagine, we've really struggled with figuring this out. All of us have. And what somebody said, called it the Great Resignation. People are rethinking their lives. They're also statistically baby boomers, lots of baby boomers born during the war times. Lots of them had children. The succeeding generations waited longer to have children and also are having fewer. So there's some literal reasons why, but we also are puzzled because there's a striking parallel with community college and college enrollments being down. Typically in challenging times like this, enrollments go up. I'm going to retool, I'm going to, change to welding or whatever, and that's not happening. So there are lots of way more intelligent people trying to figure this out, but it's also a lot of people retiring, and they're just tired of working in there. So it's a combination of things. What I read and what I hear is that it's even more important than ever to take care of the employees you do have and to rethink and to listen and try to keep the employees that you have happy and successful. No answer there, but passionate about it.
Yeah, thank you for your input.
I will just add to that one comment. I've been on the search committee, was on the search committee for the new SOU president, and am on the search committee for the RCC president. All 5 final candidates are in town this week with different opportunities, even for you to meet with them at RCC's campus and even in the Medford campus. But what I wanted to share was the #1 concern of both of the search committees was those declining enrollments in education, and how do we better the whole value proposition. Is it even necessary anymore to get a higher education? All of that is being questioned. So anyway, let you know that they're down to 5 candidates here in Rowe Community College.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, well, I want to thank all 3 of you for being here today.
Thank you.
And giving us a nice update on what you're up to and how you're serving our community. And we are definitely very grateful to have such wonderful professional resources to help with our businesses and economic development here. It's important, so thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councilors.
And next up, we have a presentation and discussion on those American Rescue Plan Act dollars.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This is Adam. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, Adam. Yes, I can hear you. I think we're going to get the screen. You're not on our screen quite yet, Adam.
Absolutely.
I know, that's why I'm.
Because this one's still active.
Oh, okay.
Give me just a second, Adam. I'm trying to give you control. That should be it.
And I'm sharing my screen. Can you see the cover page now?
We do.
Wonderful. So I'm here today, as you said, to continue the conversation on the allocation of the American Rescue Plan Act funds. The subject and summary for today's presentation is to do a very brief review of the survey results that we received, and then to discuss some potential uses. And of course, the relationship to council goals is all of them, as they can be benefited in some way. So to start off with the survey results, the full detailed presentation on those results was delivered on November 29th, 2021. I just wanted to put that as a point of reference because there's a great amount of detail to go through if anybody wanted to go back and review all of the data that was provided. But essentially, we received 775 household responses and 81 business responses. Starting first with the household survey findings, this is just a heat map of where the responses came from, so fairly good distribution throughout the city. And then with the topics that were provided in the survey for respondents to essentially mark their prioritization for, and on the bottom you can see that 66.4% of all of the respondents showed a preference in infrastructure investments. Now, you can see that all of those percentages add up to more than 100, and that was because you could select more than one. So what this chart shows us is that of all of the respondents, 66.4% agreed that infrastructure investment should be a high priority, and then 48.6% agreed that services to disproportionately impacted communities was important as well, and then the number 3 being 40% for addressing negative economic impacts. We also gathered some general comments where people could write in and add a bit more detail. That
Hey,
number.
Adam?
Oh, yes.
Rob has a question.
Thanks, Adam. So on the prior slide, can you define for us, please, services to disproportionately impacted communities, what exactly that means?
Services to disproportionately impacted communities is a fairly broad range. That would include homeless services. It could be for affordable housing needs, things like that. There's certainly a lot more detail there, but does that answer the question in general for now?
Yeah, I guess it does. Every time I've seen that term, I stop on it because I'm not sure exactly how disproportionately, I don't understand, actually. I still don't really understand it, but, and I'm just also wondering, I guess, if people who were filling out the survey understood exactly what it is. But so far, what you're telling us has to do with someone's state of having a home, not having a home, et cetera, I guess, is what you're saying.
So to help Adam with this, from a real life perspective, the best way I could define what that is mirroring the definition of services to disproportionately impacted communities as being extremely similar to the allowance of our community development block grant dollars. So they mirror each other quite a bit. So that represents really the dollars that we spend on low to moderate income families and programs, Maslow Project, Hearts with a Mission, all those kind of things that are focusing on what's considered disproportionately impacted, and looking at the available uses under that pillar. It's very similar to our block grant program allocations.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Thank you, Aaron. Here's a heat map of the business survey findings. And of course, there were quite a few fewer, so you won't see the same distribution as on the household survey. But a similar chart here in that 60.5% agreed upon infrastructure investments, 40.7% agreed on addressing negative economic impacts, and then 34.6% on services to disproportionately impacted communities. Again, some general comments, but from the business survey results. And so a very brief summary of the survey results is that the top 3 categories were, as you see there, infrastructure investment, services to disproportionately impacted communities, and addressing negative economic impacts. Now, the remainder of the presentation is a summary of some of the options that staff has identified of potential uses of ARPA that we believe align with Council's strategic plan, the survey results, or are just for the financial health of the city, or certainly a combination of any of those. qualifying water capital projects, $3 million. We've discussed this before, and the reason that the language there is fairly general, as opposed to being just the water treatment plant, is that any contribution to eligible water capital projects benefits the water rate payers by making more cash available and therefore reducing the amount of debt that would be needed for the water treatment plant. So another similar example could be some sort of plan to incentivize residential development by front-loading water and or sewer to large tracts of undeveloped land. That'd be kind of a subcategory of that, but also bringing in the sewer piece. Another item that is definitely ARPA reimbursable is the survey, which totaled to be $27,600. And we have already reimbursed the city for those funds. That was some software and, of course, a lot of printing of survey documentation and getting that back. Another item that's similar but much smaller is the Parklet Survey, which so far has costed $600, but very much benefited from all of the work that was done for the ARPA survey, but much smaller in scale. So another potential use of ARPA funds too could be to reimburse the city for the cost of the Parklet Survey. Another option could be looking into portable parklets. Parklet infrastructure plan is part of our strategic plan. The intent behind developing portable parklets would, according to the survey, help with addressing negative economic impacts. And according to the final ruling, ARPA allows for physical plant changes to enable greater use of outdoor spaces. So I believe that that would be a justifiable use of ARPA dollars. I've got a question mark on the cost because we don't know exactly what that would be or what the program would look like. But if council was interested, we could certainly look into developing that further. Another item could be reimbursing the city for COVID supplies. So far, we've spent $10,380 on things like masks, gloves, and disinfectants. But that is as of a week ago when I pulled those numbers. So that cost will probably continue to increase as that's an ongoing expense. And of course, there's kind of a cost implication there in that if we don't use ARPA to reimburse the city for these costs, then that just comes out of the departmental budgets. But $10,000 so far is not extremely large. Another option could be to expand our use of sanitation technicians, which are estimated to be about $48,500 each on an annual basis. Now, right now, police has sanitation technicians, but that cost is being covered by another grant, which had to be extended. So there was some question as to whether that grant would continue to be available to fund the police sanitation technicians, but fortunately that will continue. However, fire and parks could also potentially benefit from having sanitation technicians in response to additional cleaning and things like that related to COVID. The next item is isolation and quarantine time. Now what that is due to the isolation and quarantine guidance. When an employee is exposed to someone with COVID, then they also have to isolate and quarantine. And in some cases, our employees did have symptoms. In other cases, they had no symptoms. So they weren't necessarily sick. So instead, they were put on paid administrative leave until they could come back. And I've listed there kind of a summary of the different departments and what that cost has been, and then rounded up fairly generously to a total of $40,000, because I think we had some more trickle in here in the last week after I pulled these numbers. That last bullet there is that, of course, the requirement for quarantine will be lifted on March 12th. So this is not going to be an ongoing cost that will continue indefinitely. So $40,000 could be fairly close to the total cost related to that paid administrative leave for quarantine time. Another item related to employee time is the administration of ARPA, which is an allowable expense. And what that is essentially staff time, which I've estimated to be about $26,000 so far, which is made up of 446 total hours of staff time spent on administering this grant. Similar to the COVID supplies, reimbursing these departments for their time would provide a budgetary relief. And if not, then the departments were just responsible for paying for that administration of ARPA.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
Another,
Wait,
Yeah, Adam, so on the isolation and quarantine time, how are those figures arrived at? I mean, if someone's on quarantine, they're not getting extra pay, so where do those figures come from?
these figures are the cost of their salary. I also included the FICA, Medicare, and PERS costs, which are a set percentage of their salary. So for the hours that the employee was not providing their normal service to the citizens of Grants Pass, but were still being paid because of the quarantine requirement, that's how these numbers were arrived at.
I guess that is a very unsatisfying answer to me, but if you were to say something that replacing them cost X number of dollars, I might, that might actually jive more with what I would think would be justified, but these people were paid anyway, so it's not like whether someone's working or someone's staying at home, it's not like their pay was increased by staying at home, so I don't really follow your logic.
The logic being that they weren't necessarily sick, but were required not to come to work, and were being paid administrative leave for that time.
all right, go ahead.
I don't believe I got through portable toilets. So portable toilets, at the moment, we've spent $8,000, but that's kind of a monthly cost, so that's ongoing and could increase as time progresses. The justification behind the portable toilets is that they provide health services to the general public, and also to a significant extent to those disproportionately impacted by COVID. Obviously, Riverside Park being an example of that. Positive about the portable toilets versus a more permanent structure is that their structure is more resistant to damage and can be replaced relatively quickly. You can just get rid of the old one and bring in a new one and continue service, as well as the fact that they can be serviced quite regularly. A similar option to that, though, is to install the Portland Loo at Baker Park with a total estimated cost of $270,000, which is definitely a larger investment, but it provides some of those same benefits in that Baker Park is widely used by those disproportionately impacted by COVID. The sturdy structure, as well as the ease of cleaning, would provide an enhanced level of service, and the design can discourage inappropriate use and damage of the facilities like we have seen in some of our regular restroom facilities. Another option we investigated was using ARPA funds to construct COVID barriers or shields, and what I mean by that is like a plexiglass or glass separation of City of Grants Pass employees from the public. Now, to use ARPA funds on this type of project, it must be to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 for the general public and not necessarily between employees. And we definitely looked at that as an option in an attempt to try and reduce the amount of quarantine time that employees were having to go on whenever they were exposed. But unfortunately, it must be for the general public. So there'd only be a couple of places here at the city where we could use ARPA funds for that. And again, related to the health of the general public, the city's HVAC system is in need of some help, but I believe the ARPA could only be used for a certain percentage of the total cost of the HVAC system, and that would be kind of a percentage or proportionate share of the total square footage where the general public is allowed to go. So it certainly could not pay for the entire HVAC system.
Adam?
Yes.
Valerie,
I just have a question. I know that there was originally CARES Act, am I correct? Money that came through for some of this stuff earlier. How is that compared to the ARPA funding?
Use of CARES Act funding has ended at this point. That was only through June 30th of 2021.
Okay, so when you put in the barriers and those sorts of things, was that previous to that or was that after? Are you just trying to get more reimbursement? Is that what we're kind of looking at things that have already been done, or looking at?
No, this would be if we wanted to add additional improvements to barriers.
Okay, thank you.
Another option that has certainly been discussed within the last couple of months is a swimming pool. Last time we presented ARPA as a potential funding source for the swimming pool, it was noted that it must be within a qualified census tract. And the map that you can see on the top right, that purple shaded area, is the qualified census tract. And you should be able to see there in the middle left portion that Grants Pass High School is within that zone. So the current site for the pool is also within the qualified census tract. And so I believe that definitely helps us make the argument that using ARPA funds for the swimming pool is an allowable expense. In addition to that, and I got some quotes directly from the CDC website, is that they're not aware of any scientific reports of the virus that causes COVID-19 spreading to people through waters, pools, hot tubs, water playgrounds, or other treated aquatic venues. So a pool certainly is not contrary to the guidance available from the CDC. And the U.S. Fire Administration provides guidance on calculating capacity. And I put that in there because in order to service the same number of individuals, one could make the argument that you need a larger facility so that even the same number of participants then had the appropriate amount of square footage available for social distancing. So one could argue that a larger pool would actually be necessary in these pandemic times. And of course, the pool is one of the high priorities of the strategic plan. Now, this slide touches on some options that we investigated, but I believe they may be a little challenging to defend, and I'll go into that further in a second. The first being capital investments in tourism-related facilities or tourism drivers. Now, the intent behind looking into these things would be to respond to negative economic impacts by increasing tourism and creating more reasons for people to come and visit Grants Pass. This could be done by enhancing the city's ability to host tournaments, whether that's swimming meets, pickleball or softball tournaments, things like that. Another option was using ARPA funds for the downtown welcome center, rehab, and restrooms. Now, as recreation will be a part of the downtown welcome center, there'd be some kind of proportionate allocation. So ARPA couldn't be used to fund all of that. It could definitely be used to pay for some of the bathrooms, which would be for the general public's health, as they'll be accessible from the outside, and could certainly be used for or to pay for barriers and items to mitigate the spread of COVID to the general public. So if there's a front counter and we wanted to put glass there or something to separate employees from the general public for their health, then we could use ARPA funds for that. Now, the reason these may be a little challenging to defend, and I say challenging, not impossible, because there could be additional data that I don't have at the moment, but that is related to our tourism activity. And the three charts you see on the right are three different views of our tourism activity. The first being lodging tax revenues by quarter. Now, the orange columns is the lodging tax revenues in 2020. And you can see in the second quarter, or April through June of 2020, is where we took the largest hit. That was the first full quarter of COVID. Then as you look at the orange column in July through September, it was just about the same as the previous year, so it had a fairly good rebound there. And then in October, the revenues were higher than they'd ever been before. And then moving into the light blue column in January and March, you see those revenues start to increase. And then we increase the lodging tax rate from 9 to 12%. So you see an even greater increase in lodging tax revenues for the city. Ultimately, the city has never had so much lodging tax revenue. So that's one perspective. the next perspective and where those revenues come from is hotel revenues by quarter, which is the middle chart. And it tells a very similar story in that April through June is where we really saw that decrease. Otherwise, the hotel revenues rebounded fairly well, but hotel revenues are driven by rooms rented. And so that's the third chart there on the bottom, which again shows something very similarly to the other two. But ultimately, the rooms rented now are either at or above pre-COVID levels. And I say that as a demonstration of, I don't have indisputable evidence with this information that shows that we've not been able to draw people to the city of Grants Pass. Now, there's certainly some factors in here that they might not necessarily have been tourists. The fires in Phoenix and Talent certainly were a factor in increasing the number of rooms rented during that time period. However, we would need more specific data to be able to differentiate between were tourism numbers down, how much were from other factors. I know also during the pandemic, we actually hosted a softball tournament here that had not been done before. So that actually increased tourism in some way. So with what I have, I don't have the indisputable evidence that tourism has suffered, at least not by the number of individuals that have been able to visit. This is just a summary of all of the items that I've gone over today, and we can certainly come back to this just to look at an overview of everything. The cost implication for ARPA is, of course, staff time, which could be potentially reimbursable if council so desired, in which case the true cost implication is that the attention is then being diverted from other responsibilities. A final point that I wanted to provide was from the financially biased perspective of the financial health of the city, that any contributions to activities that the city would like to perform, regardless of ARPA funding, ultimately benefits city fund balances, and the water treatment plant is an example of that. Whereas contributions to activities that would not occur without the ARPA fund really results in a net impact of $0 to city fund balances. And with that, I can take any questions, and of course, all of these options are in partnership with the rest of my colleagues on the X team, so I might need their help in answering.
Thank you, Adam. Council, what questions do you have? Vanessa.
Thank you, Adam, for that presentation. Under options from staff, isolation and quarantine time, it seems as though there's an extreme disproportion of quarantine time from police to fire. Maybe this is a question for Chief Hensman. I know the fire division is more likely to be in touch with COVID patients due to their medical response. Can you talk a little bit about why that's so disproportionate?
I can't actually. I noticed the same thing. I thought that was off. I'm not sure if we just have to take another look at those numbers. Yeah, I can't answer that question.
And Chief, if I could interject there, it just all depends on who had a positive COVID test and who they were exposed to, which there's a lot of variables that could go into that. Certainly the intent was not to point out that the cost for police was higher than fire. That's just how it happened to be of who was exposed.
Yeah, we went through a spell on the police side of the house where it seemed like teams were out for quite a while. We were running way short, bringing people back, and then maybe just the way it played out with 48 shifts on the fire side of the house, they might have unfortunately been on their off time while they were sick. I'm not 100% sure, but that's probably why that is.
Thank you.
Joel.
So Adam, for the benefit of our public, could you step back and look at the history of the amount of funding that the city received and then how much the city council has already allocated to the water treatment plant? Just so they know the existing condition of where we're at in decision making.
Absolutely, Councilor. We've been allocated $9.4 million of ARPA funds, which we'll receive in 2 halves. We've already received the first half, and we should be receiving the second half sometime in June of this year. So we'll be in possession of all of our funds fairly soon. The first time you see on the screen there is the $3 million to water capital projects. That's qualifying eligible capital projects. And then the only other thing that has truly been determined is the $28,000 for the ARPA survey to get that public input in the prioritization of the allocation of these funds. Everything else is currently an option that we're seeking guidance from council on which to pursue.
Any other questions? Joel?
This may be an unfair question to ask you, Adam, because it's kind of a break-even analysis. We presently have a public safety levy that brings in a certain amount of funding each year. We can put that on the water bill, which would increase people's water bill. The increase could be offset by ARPA dollars and paying down the debt faster. There's several people out there in the community that like to retain the ability to vote on it. So if we were going to reduce the levy by 50% and still have a levy that people can vote on, how much ARPA dollars would be needed additionally in the water treatment plant, from then which we could put the public safety bill onto the water bill?
Well, I certainly appreciate the question. I would have to do some very, very serious calculatings with the specific assumptions that we just don't have yet. For example, I know Jason has brought before you the fact that we're investigating multiple funding options with varying interest rates, but we don't know how much money we'll be able to borrow at each of those interest rates. So I hesitate to give you a very exact number, and what I do have, and I apologize, I didn't get this added to the portion that you looked at, but the PowerPoint presentation that's printed out before you. But I do have this here, and what this is kind of a relative benefit to the water rates by contributing ARPA dollars or any external debt reduction funding to the water treatment plant project. Now, the original rate structure was established to cover for regular ongoing operations and maintenance. It also set aside, or was established to set aside some cash to initially fund the water treatment plant. But then a significant portion of it was also to cover the debt service that would be associated with around $60 million of debt. So the chart at the bottom shows varying levels of external debt reduction. I put 1 million, 3 million, 6 million, 9 million, and then that $50 million is meant to represent the BRIC grant, which we've applied for, but we don't know if we'll be receiving that yet. So none of this is a promise, only a scenario. In each line, you see that the amount of debt is reduced with an initial amount of $60 million all the way down to only needing to borrow $10 million. Now, if we made the assumption that we borrowed that amount at 3.5% interest over 30 years, the total cost, including principal and interest, is as seen in that middle column. And then the percentage to the side of that is essentially the proportionate benefit to the debt service portion of the rates. So as the total debt increases, or excuse me, as the debt decreases by $1 million, you're providing a 1.7% benefit to the rates that would be needed to support that debt. And you'll see in the first column that those percentages are the same as in this specific scenario of the 3.5% interest. So this would work with whatever interest rates we actually get. An example being the $3 million that has definitely been set aside for qualifying water treatment or qualifying water capital projects actually provides a 5% benefit to the portion of the rate structure that covers debt service. In addition to that, we have URA contributions, which as the total amount of debt decreases, the amount that the URA can contribute also decreases because it can only contribute 18% of the total debt service. Combining those two items together, you see in the first line, if we had to borrow $60 million and then the URA was able to contribute 18%, then that is an 18% benefit to the water rate structure. And then of course you add in other external debt reduction options like ARPA or like BRIC funding, then you have much larger benefits to the rate structure. I've discussed this a lot with Jason, and because there are so many variables, I certainly hesitate to give you an exact number. It will all depend on the total amount of debt that we take out, the exact interest rate, even the layering of the debt that we go after. Well, you know, there's a difference between if we borrow all $60 million in one fell swoop or if we spread it out over 3 or 4 years. So I apologize. I don't think I'd be able to answer your question. I understand the intent, but that will all depend on the debt that we actually get.
So Adam, I appreciate your explanation. I lost you about halfway through, which was probably true of all of us. So let me simplify the question. If we were to put half of the levy on people's water bill, that increases so many dollars that would come from the water bill. So at the assumed rate of interest or a sensitivity analysis, if you wanted to do a range of interest, how much money would you have to invest to reduce debt to offset that amount that would be equal to half of the levy?
Joel, when you say half of the levy, could you clarify what you mean? Half of the levy? There isn't a levy for this, so can you clarify what you're asking?
The public safety levy.
So half of the public safety levy would be somewhere around $3.2 million, I think, on an annual basis. But even with that assumption, I can't do that calculation right here at the moment, and that would still depend on the interest rates of the debt that we go after in order to replace that revenue with some sort of utility fee.
Correct.
So I apologize, I'm not able to answer that question right now.
Well, I appreciate that, and that's where that sensitivity analysis would come in to give us a range.
Valerie, then Vanessa.
Yes, thank you, Adam. And yes, I can see why that would be a pretty complex number to say off the top of your head. But, you know, I guess that I just want to clarify where we are with the ARPA funds. When is the time that when we have to make and have our decision made on how these ARPA funds are going to be spent?
I believe that the funds have to be committed by the end of fiscal year 2025 and spent by the end of 2026.
Okay, and that's a complete, there was no, you know, because we got half of them early, we had to have a commitment for any particular earlier, am I correct?
That's correct. The two disbursements of funds are not impacted in any way by the final deadlines.
Okay, so that is December 2025 where we have to make the commitment by, okay, that helps. And then
It's December 24.
December 24th, okay. December 24th, 2025? Or 2024 is what you're saying? Okay, okay.
December 24, the monies
Okay.
need to be spent and or allocated. You could have, say, for instance, you did a project where you utilized ARPA dollars for affordable housing and you contracted with a contractor to have it developed, but the project was actually not going to be complete until 26 or something, that's okay. You've got you just have to make sure that in December 24, you've got a contract saying it's going to be completed and done. So you got almost a 2-year buffer, but you really need to have all the money and an idea of where it's going by the end of 24.
Okay, thank you, that helps. So that is important, and then I just want to I want to clarify that so far we have committed $3 million to the water treatment, and we've also committed the 28 towards the survey, and that to this point have been the only 2 pieces that have been committed. And so basically what we're looking at today is the X team and all sat down and prioritized funds that the city, what they would recommend for us to look at as an option as we move forward in the spending of the rest of the funding. Correct?
Yeah, these were in addition to what you sort of already considered that we were looking at from an internal perspective that could benefit the organization's well-being.
Right. So we have the organization and then we have the survey that we did. So we're just trying to kind of
put them all together.
Put them all together and take a look at it, and then tie them into our strategic plan that we'd made so that we could prioritize those things that we'd already planned from the past moving forward. A couple things, little questions that I had about that. I was on the portable toilets, the 8,000. Are those the toilets that we currently have down at Riverside Park? So that would include that, and then the Portland Loo would just be one-time purchase that would kind of do the same thing to take care of that. The barriers would be anything that we move forward with, not which was already done. HVAC is the same way, because I know that would be anything moving forward at this point that would affect the public, correct?
Yes, just the public space.
So that would be like this building.
Yeah, so it'd be a percentage based on square footage. We know all of our lobbies are a certain square footage, and we'd be able to apportion that square footage cost to the total project.
Okay. And then I noticed that on the swimming pool, is that the opportunities zone that we're talking about?
That is a location that is within that zone, so that means based on the definitions of what's an allowable use, we believe that that would be an allowable use for the ARPA dollars.
Because it is in a opportunity zone, which is a low income area of the Josephine County.
And it helps promote or provide additional outdoor recreation that provides for potential physical spacing between individuals also.
Okay, I just wanted to notice that because we had talked earlier about the opportunity zone, and there was only one opportunity zone in Josephine County, and that is based upon income levels, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, alrighty.
Yes, the purple area you see is the qualified census tract.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I think those are my major questions. I just wanted clarification on exactly that this was one piece of the puzzle as we move forward in making our decision on the ARPA funds. Thank you.
In making your decision, these are great conversations to have, and at some point, I think council will need to try to solidify additional resources, because if we're going to meet our timeline, it does take time to spend the money and to get it resolved. So the sooner we have direction, especially if it's a bigger ticket or more complex issue, then we can get that taken care of and not have to worry about trying to get the money spent like we sometimes do with our block grant dollars. We have some leftover money and it's like, oh my gosh, we got to spend it or lose it. So we don't want to get in that situation.
Yeah, so this basically today was to say, okay, this is staff recommendations for what we can use it for. This is a review what we've come up, and so now it's time to really sit down and make some decisions. And I would agree with you that we need to do it sooner than later to make sure that it's spent. But I just wanted to clarify that that's what today's discussion was for.
And if I may, there's the ARPA deadlines, but there are also some fiscal year considerations to be had as well. Something as simple as COVID supplies, the $10,380 line item you see there. Ideally, we would, from an accounting perspective, it would be beneficial to know if we'll be reimbursing those departments for those costs, so that we can go ahead and make all the accounting adjustments to reimburse the departments for those costs in the fiscal year that they took place would be preferable from an audit standpoint. But I'm sure we could come up with another method of reimbursing those departments if the decision wasn't made until later.
And June 30th is the end of the fiscal year, correct?
That's correct, and I apologize about the date before. I got my fiscal years prioritized over my calendar years.
But like Adam did mention some of those things, like he said, the COVID supplies, the administrative time, if council was able to say, yeah, we can utilize those as an allowable expense, then it is something that we could start and we could put it in the budget as we're working on the budget now.
So just a follow-up to that question, and I'm just going back to like the portable dolls at $8,000 ongoing. Could we go back, could you utilize the funds from when those were first put in because it was in the time that we first received ARPA, or is it from when we make the decision to grant that we're going to do that we can start moving forward?
It would go back to the beginning of July 1st, 2021. What staff has been doing is tracking all of the expenditures that we believe could potentially be ARPA reimbursable. And then we provide further analysis to see if in fact they are allowable. And then with council's blessing, then we can move forward with those items or not.
Okay, thank you.
Vanessa, then Brian.
Back in our January workshop, we were informed that the installation of a new restroom at Baker Park could come from park funds. Do you have any idea if there are enough funds in that, if there are enough funds there for that purchase, or if it would need to come through ARPA?
I do not recall off the top of my head. Bradley may have a better memory of that specific presentation. But it could be a portion, half and half, just as an example.
So
it doesn't have to pay for the whole thing.
yeah, we would ultimately do have the resources for that. It would likely come out of our maintenance budget that we have. I forget what the number is, but it was around 800,000 or something along those lines. So we do potentially have some general funds for that if that's the direction we're going to move forward with, or we could utilize full or a portion of ARPA for that.
Thank you.
Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I just have a question regarding the deadlines and a specific activity that council may decide to take up. So just as an example, you know, one of the priorities that the community said that we should focus this money on is things related to housing. So I'm just wondering, like in theory, if council decided to use some of this money to purchase a tract of land to incentivize housing on in the future, would the deadline apply to the point when council purchased the property? Would the funds be considered expended then, or would we need to have development complete on that property by the deadline?
You'd have to have all of, yeah, go ahead, Adam.
I don't think the full development of the property would be required. It would just be the expenditure of the ARPA dollars would be us purchasing the property is where we would comply with the ARPA requirements from the city's perspective.
Very good, thanks.
Joel.
Well, does it make sense then? There's several small ticket items that compared to the $9 million grant that were expenses associated with COVID, namely the survey that we've already paid for, the parklets, the supplies, the sanitation technicians, the quarantine time, administrative time, and the portable toilets. Fairly small ticket items, if that makes sense. I don't see that being a big deal as we move forward, and it lessens the impact on city budgets due to the COVID, which is the purpose of the funds, part of the purpose of the funds. I don't know if that makes sense. I mean, it makes sense to me, I guess.
Are we done with questions? Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, DJ, go ahead.
Okay, we're 2 hours into this meeting, and I mean, to be totally honest with everybody in the room, I have learned nothing today. We've got nothing done today. The ARPA presentation was Adam reading us a document that we all should already know. The questions that have been asked so far have been asked dozens of times before, and we're 2 hours into this meeting. I'm desperately asking everybody in this room to start getting a focused discussion on what we want to do with the ARPA funds, or let's get out of this meeting, think tank outside of the meeting, and come back with some actual substance. I can't see the room right now. I can't read the room right now, but I would be shocked if I wasn't the only one thinking this.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I think today we've heard some ideas here from staff about things that could be reimbursed by ARPA funds, but these are not your limited options, right? So we have some other ideas I know from council that are also appropriate uses of the ARPA funds, and we need to figure out how to move forward into that conversation. We're going to obviously have a couple more meetings about this before we've divided up all of those funds, but let's get going on discussion. Is there anything on this list today that appeals to you or that you definitely don't want to use these funds for? Are there other big ticket items that we need to start moving forward on? And why don't we go Brian, Vanessa, Rob?
I'll start with what's in the presentation we were just given. I could see personally supporting, with regards to portable parklets, I could see maybe supporting a leveraging, maybe like a 50% match program where the city would provide a match for a restaurant that wanted to participate in that program, so we could leverage those dollars. I could see this funding very easily going towards ongoing funding for the portable toilets that are used in the parks and in other places around town. I think that's a very wise use. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not really in favor of much else on this list. I would like to focus on what the community said we should do and what council already knows we need to do, which is focus on affordable housing and the homeless issue, and potentially putting a little bit more towards water capital projects if we don't get those grants. But I would wait on that decision until we find out how that turns out. Thank you.
Vanessa?
Yeah, to briefly address a previous statement that I believe was extremely insensitive to our community partners, seeing as most of this meeting so far has been a recap of local advocacy for small business. I don't appreciate that, as I see their presentations being very valuable. In regards to the ARPA discussion, I do support the general needs from staff, such as COVID supplies, sanitation technicians, and so forth. That really is the heart of these dollars, along with community bolstering. A response to the pandemic is an absolute acceptable source for the funds. For the incentivized residential development, I do believe that that falls in line with the recommendations from the Housing Advisory Committee. If the council recalls, we did receive a presentation on their 3 motions back in August, and they were to spend $2 million in funds for costs associated with development of affordable housing projects, the investment in infrastructure in very strategic locations in the urban growth boundary, with the creation of reimbursement districts and land acquisition. So I do support that as well. I do support looking into the potential cost of an HVAC system as well. I would like that done in anticipation and coordination with the unveiling of the capital improvement plan as well. I do not support purchasing the Portland Loo at Baker Park. I believe that that would need to come out of the Parks Fund as a more acceptable approach to that as well. We did receive a community suggestion from the Grants Pass Softball Association that I'd like the council to consider for $97,500. As well, back in August, I did have a couple of topics that I would like to see staff explore. I don't know if there's been an opportunity for that. One of them was establishing a land bank program, which is in line with our strategic plan, a weatherization program for homeowners, 30 to 50% of AMI, a technical assistant grant for small businesses, focusing on digital literacy, and a second water emergency response trailer for placement south of the river.
All right, Rob?
So I think we've got, we have a list here, and in my mind, I kind of segregated into two aspects. One is where, as far as city costs go, what parts of COVID response caused the city to essentially pay more out of pocket, and things like COVID barriers, possibly like a safety technician, if that is actually in the past, meaning that we needed more safety technicians during COVID. To me, that would be a reasonable thing, rather than the city having to absorb the brunt of those costs. Other things on this list, like, an HVAC system, I mean, that's nice. It basically would help the city bail out its poor budgeting for the last 10 or 20 years by not planning properly for the replacement of the HVAC system. That isn't something that COVID created. That's just kind of a bailout. If I was going to bail anything out, I would probably, as Brian said, potentially invest more into the water treatment plant project. And what I like about that is we've seen the numbers on that. And as far as, we'll say, return on our investment for the citizens, that's probably, that's a piece that we can't really beat anywhere else on return on investment on that piece of, the water treatment plant infrastructure. We've got, there's different types of ways to quantify a return on investment, and obviously some of it is human quality, so it's not just all about dollars and cents. Another piece that I think is just kind of really strange and almost like irrelevant is the isolation and quarantine time. I mean, we were told for the last 2 years, just about every time we turned around, that things are slow, we can't get anything done. Sorry for the delays, but because of COVID issues, staff is out, staff is down, this and that. So basically, the public got cheated out of services, and now we want to basically just throw $40,000 out of that retroactively. It just makes no sense at all to me. We basically didn't have the service of those people, but it doesn't seem as though that service was really replaced in many cases, certainly not inside the City Hall building. I mean, it may have been replaced on from a police and fire perspective with overtime, that may have been replaced and the public got the service in those areas. Inside City Hall, I don't know that that's true. We were told the whole time that there was all kinds of delays because people were out. So I can't really see that $40,000 for quarantine time. I'm not behind that. But I'm also not, I don't have a problem with not filling up this whole sheet to the 9 million, because we know that we have through the for the water plant, we have a really good place we can park any money that we legitimately can we'll say anything we're left over with of that 9 million. That's a great place to put that money, because it definitely benefits the public immediately. As far as I'd have to look at the list. That's just off the top of my head today, and I'm sorry I read this over the weekend. I didn't study it carefully with the idea that I was going to make final decisions today. But
Rob, I don't think we need to make any decisions today.
Yeah, but or even final suggestions. But that's just so far off the top of my head today. Thank you.
Brian, then Valerie.
Yeah, Rob makes some good points. I wanted to this isn't a counterpoint to the water treatment plant argument, but it's just another thing to consider. That's been, shared that that's probably our best bang for our buck, so to speak. However, if we invest the same amount of money into housing, that's going to increase property tax revenue forever. That's going to increase water revenue forever. So there's some returns there, and that's just that's just revenue for the city. That's not benefit. There's also the benefit for the community of having the housing and bringing housing costs down. So there's I don't want us to get too locked into this narrative that the water plant is the best bang for our buck. It is a good bang for our buck, but I think housing offers a very compelling alternative and option for us too. So I know the Housing Committee has taken up talking about the land bank program. That's something that we talked about at strategic planning this year. I think potentially putting some of these funds into a land bank program to procure land for future housing would be something we should look at. I had a question about the sanitation technicians. Is that, it says 48,500 each. Is that something that we're foreseeing needing in the future to keep having, or is this to recoup costs that we've already spent?
So the sanitation technicians that are currently working for police are covered by another grant. So that is essentially paid for. There was some question as to whether the grant would be extended, and in fact it was. So ARPA is no longer necessary to cover the sanitation techs that we have. This line would then represent if we wanted additional sanitation technicians somewhere else to provide an enhanced level of service related to cleaning things. But just wanted to throw that in there as one of the options that we investigated.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I think now understanding what that is, I still wouldn't support that. But I think there's a compelling argument for putting a good chunk of these ARPA funds towards housing-related issues, as it is one of the top issues in our community. Thanks.
Valerie?
Yeah, I actually just wanted to respond a little bit to DJ's comments, because I do disagree. I think, this is an important piece of the puzzle that we truly have to understand and think about. I'm not ready to make some decisions today. I do agree that we need to make some soon for a lot of reasons. My leaning is towards putting infrastructure in the ground for housing. I don't necessarily say just for low-income housing. I also think we're looking about workforce housing. So that remains with me. One of the biggest priority is the housing piece. Moving forward, I am not opposed to the Portland Loo, and the reason that I'm not, because that money for the money that we currently have in our budget would stay there. So a lot of these things, you're helping this, you're keeping what we have intact and using ARPA funds for one-time piece and allowing that $800,000 to move forward to work on the tournaments and work on those other things. So I see the Portland Loo as a win myself. I also see a win in being able to help a small portion of the swimming pool, specifically at the Caveman site that is currently there, because it is an opportunity zone. So that's one more piece that we could utilize, one more tool to utilize at the same time to get a bigger bang for our buck. And I do support the Parklet idea. I like the 50% match that was brought forward there. So anyway, a lot of information, and I think it was really necessary to get this information before we make our bigger plans.
Kurt?
As most people know, I haven't been real crazy about spending any of this money. ARPA dollars are just zombie dollars. They're somebody else's debt, and so I'm not crazy about it. So I've always said I wanted to spend it on something that was going to benefit everybody, and so the water plant has always been a good target. It may seem contradictory, but I would support the Grants Pass Softball Association request, because I think that would enhance quality of life around here for everybody in some regard. So I do agree with Joel. There's a lot of little dollar items on here that we would just be reimbursing ourselves for, and I would support those as well. So that's my thoughts.
Aaron?
Mayor, it may be helpful if you'd like, I could suggest that we put together a spreadsheet similar to what we did when we did our general fund cuts of $1.8 million and provided you as comprehensive a list as possible with then the dollar amount that we have left to allocate minus the $3 million that's already been allocated to water. Give that to you as a worksheet. Then you guys can take a look at that, give us the information, we'll compile that and bring it to you at the upcoming workshop that we would discuss this, to where then you'll have a general prioritization of items and potential amounts to allocate towards those funds, towards those projects.
I think that would be helpful. Yeah. Oh, we've got everybody's hand up. Is that a vote or you'll want to talk? Yeah. Just go Vanessa, Rick, Valerie.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, I do also support the 50% grant for the Parklet program. I think that that would be a great use of these funds as well. And I do like the idea of a spreadsheet. I would like us to begin to focus on this topic similar to how we did with the budget cut, where we were visiting it very frequently until we got it finalized.
Rick?
I would also think the spreadsheet would be very helpful. I like the comments that Brian made about affordable housing, and also that there's additional benefits in the tax base that goes there. I was wondering on this spreadsheet whether it'd be appropriate to throw in just a couple other ideas just to see what the response would be from the council. If there are other infrastructure needs like roads and public works paving, if that qualifies, or new water lines, because I know some of our water lines are really antiquated, and if that would be an additional opportunity to look at that as well. Thank you.
Valerie?
Actually, I don't think it does qualify, but we also have the money coming down from the infrastructure, I think, for a lot of the roads. Anyway, I just wanted to ask if we could get some numbers. When we're talking about infrastructure and laying infrastructure down, it's really hard because we don't know what that costs. What number is that? If you were to take Allenwood property and we were to run, I mean, if we have property now that we could run something to, do we have numbers so that we have an idea of what it would cost?
Yeah, that could get us sort of side railed quite a bit and change the focus. I think if you're wanting to do that, that's going to be a whole nother workshop in itself. I think determining whether or not council has an interest in taking some of the ARPA dollars for that build out, and then we could prioritize where that would go. Once you've determined an amount, that may be a more efficient way of doing it. I'm just concerned about the focus if we just start focusing on areas and streets and costs, but we could do that. It's just gonna...
Well, it's hard to know how much to allow if we're talking about putting infrastructure in the ground when we have absolutely no idea what that amount of money we would need to be able to do it.
We could take all $6 million of it and use it all for a number of the unbuildable areas. So it really is, if that's one of your top priorities, then maybe it would be appropriate. If it's down the list of things, and let's say you want to put, of the $6 million that's left, $6.5 million that's left, let's say you want to put $5 million to that, to a number of other projects, and then you've got $1 million left for this one, then that's great. We can, it all depends, I guess, on where the priority is. Whatever council would like to do. I just know it'll be an exercise in itself if we were to look at that.
I just think it's important to have a cost, because personally that's, to me, a major priority is putting infrastructure in the ground for housing. But if I don't know how much it costs to put that infrastructure in the ground for housing, and then we just spend, I mean, I just need to know how much would be necessary to, say, be able to choose 2 pieces of property somewhere, you know, just randomly within the urban growth plan, or give us an idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, and with that, I want to make sure we've got similar expectations, unless council sees it in another way. But when we're talking about front-loading infrastructure, we'd be talking about the extension of water and sewer, stormwater, whatever is necessary in undevelopable tracts of land, larger tracts of land that have great future potential for development. And then we would establish like reimbursement districts or something along those lines to help reimburse the city for that impact, or then you would have a fee waiver to anything that is deemed affordable housing, or something along those lines, to where they may not have to pay that fee. The one thing you'd have to consider, if you're going to front load and then say 2 developers come in and you don't have a system established for some kind of reimbursement or fair and equitable, then you're having a developer to profit off of the development of public money. So there's a lot that goes involved. It's not as simple as let's just front load the water and sewer. There's a lot of detail associated with that we haven't discussed yet.
Rob?
Yeah, along a similar line of thinking, what Valerie was saying, I mean, I'm glad that Brian reminded me, because I forgot to mention that affordable housing should also be, based on the survey and based on what the public wants, should be clearly one of our main focuses on what to do with this money. But along the same lines as what Valerie was getting at, I mean, we could decide on a dollar amount, but there's so many different ways. I mean, we could suck up, you know, the remaining $6 million easily on affordable housing issues. So if we're going to discuss that or have that on our spreadsheet, I think we need to have some examples as to what that dollar amount might buy us. Or, you know, whether it's, you know, whatever figure we choose, there's so many different ways to spend that. So, and I'm sure some are probably going to be much more efficient in getting what we want done. So I'd like to have that included in the spreadsheet, but we also need some examples. And I'm sorry I can't tell you today exactly what I'm looking for, because I'm looking for examples. So I'm looking for people who are smarter than me to give me some examples. So that's part of that discussion.
Joel?
Well, you know, adding on to Rob's comments and everybody else's, and they're all good comments. I appreciate the comments. Just not that those dollars for affordable housing or advanced development would be used for a particular project, but just some education as to what would it cost to front load like Allendale, and then when we have it allocated in the spreadsheet, we have some idea what it pays for or what it doesn't pay for in terms of an example. Not that it would necessarily go there, because that would be a separate decision.
Vanessa?
I think the examples that some people are looking for could potentially come from the Housing Advisory Committee. It was their motion, and they did specifically use the term strategic location. So I don't know if they already have locations in mind or if that's something that they could work on, but I think that insight may come from them.
Thank you. Next. We all talked out. Brian?
I mean, I could just provide another example that I had thought of, and I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but the property that we were previously looking at for the urban campground, that could potentially be a great spot for high density housing. So, you know, even if we bought it for housing, you know, there's a potential for, you know, I don't know, 100 units there. So, you know, just as another example of like something that a land bank program that could be used for. And I'm not necessarily saying we should use it for that property, but those kinds of examples, I think, are what people are maybe looking for.
Yeah, I think this reminds me a little bit of the URA discussion we had at strategic planning, where we need some examples of successful ideas in other places, because we don't need to reinvent the wheel on this, but it sounds like there's really a strong interest in favor of moving forward with housing, using some of this money to help with our housing issue, whether that's infrastructure or land banking or, you know, getting a high density project started. So the spreadsheet is a good idea, and we can add, you know, your ideas here today as well as those that we talked about at the previous meetings, and kind of formalize this into a process that's more similar to what we went through with that police funding issue last year, and we're just going to keep putting it back on the agenda like every 2 weeks or something until we get a better plan. All right, any final comments on that today? All right, thanks everybody, and let's move on to agenda setting. So next week we have a workshop set up with presentation from Matt Lund from the YMCA. He wants to let you all know about the YMCA's plans for a new facility and see if there's a way for the city to partner on that. The sheriff is going to present on his proposal for funding criminal justice. And then we're going to have a discussion about our own permanent funding for police and fire. Then we have a meeting next Wednesday that involves a public hearing with an ordinance regarding the Cathedral Square property line vacation. Council action item is to consider an ordinance for Municipal Code Title VI, Uniform Traffic Code Electric Charging Stations. And consent calendar has a motion for landscape text amendment findings of fact. And then we need to appoint some members to our Tourism Advisory Committee. Any questions about next week, Brian?
I had a question about the previous, our workshop next week with the YMCA. Is part of that presentation going to cover the statistics for the caveman pool for the previous year that we had requested last year?
Not to the best of my knowledge, but it looks like Brad, you have something?
Well, I was just going to say, Mayor, we could add that. We do have those numbers. We do anticipate, I mean, I think Aaron maybe has more, but that the pool will be a part of the discussion. But if you'd like to, we can do that, or we can put them in a memo, which is how I actually have it about 50% drafted, is in a memo.
Either way is fine. I just know that we've requested that, and I think it would be pertinent to get that at least by then or at that time.
Brad was working on the memo, so we'll get that memo out before the end of the week, and that way you'll have it in advance of the discussion.
Okay, Valerie?
I just have a quick question on the Tourism Advisory 6 members that we're appointing. At one point in time, it was brought up, I think they had recommended or requested that they have some county members and some Cindy members. Was that ever put forward, or?
The Tourism Advisory Committee did briefly talk about that. They have not crafted a formal motion. I think that Tori, she gave some input at the last meeting, actually at the last 2 meetings, and raised that point. But they're, I think, still wanting to kind of talk through a little bit more on the details on what that position might look like. So you don't have a motion from the Tourism Advisory Committee forwarded to you on that, but it has been talked about.
So I'm just saying, so we would be appointing 6 members, I'm assuming, from the city, if that was done on the March 16th meeting?
That's correct.
So when is the next tourism advisory meeting? I'm just curious if that's something they wanted to have happen. It seems crazy to, it's kind of feels like putting the cart before the horse.
Well, I think from their standpoint, they wanted to fill the 4 of those 6 are current positions. And then they have 2 vacant positions. And then their discussion about the county, I think, was an additional member.
Okay, thank you.
All right, other questions about next week? All right, and then March 21st, it looks like we are invited to an electric charging station ribbon cutting. Is that at the Downtown Welcome Center?
Yes, it is. We'll have representatives from Pacific Power there and be ready to put the first charging station in service.
Cool. All right, so we'll do that real quick before coming back to our workshop because that ribbon cutting is at 11. We'll come back here and we have the first of 2 meetings dealing with the L&B project prioritization. Is there anything else? We're going to get ARPA on this schedule going forward, more ARPA discussions, but is there anything else that you wanted to request to add at this time? Brian?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to check up on a couple of things. I know at strategic planning, we had a discussion about initiating a quarterly committee chair meeting, and I know we're getting to the end of the first quarter, and I don't know that has been scheduled yet, so I wanted to first check on that.
It has. Is it next Friday? 18th? So that's a Thursday maybe? I'm not sure. Anyway, it is coming up on March 18th. So I think that your council president, Joel King, and I, and the committee chairs are invited to that. I mean,
what time?
Karen, 1?
Okay,
1 o'clock.
great, thank you.
Okay.
And then I wanted to check in on the Allenwood discussion. I know that we had given direction, I think, to send that to Housing Advisory for their input, and I know that they have given their input, so I'm hoping that we can get that back on our agenda soon.
Staff, are you familiar with where that's at? Anybody?
Counselor is correct. HAC has reviewed it, so we need to, I guess, summarize that recommendation from HAC in writing and get it so that you can put that on your agenda.
Okay, thank you.
And I just have one more.
All right.
I know we gave some direction on the urban campground. I believe that was last week. It might have been 2 weeks now, but I was unclear as far as how much time it would take before we would be getting that back on our agenda again. So I would like to have some clarity on that.
Yeah, I think it can come back just about any time, right? We just need staff to give us a proposal at this point. So we haven't had another agenda setting meeting since last, week. So it's due to come.
How long does staff foresee it taking before that's ready to come back to us?
You're talking about the contract language? Augustus has been working on it. I'm sure he's pretty close to it being done, but I'll have him answer that.
Yeah, I also thought we were waiting on some contract language from OCF. I don't know who is in charge of that, but I've started putting the contract language together so far.
Okay, well, I think that's probably on staff. I don't know that any of us up here are doing it, so, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think that was the expectation, that staff would check in with OCF to see what recommendation they have and then write something up. So I think Joel and I are meeting Wednesday this week. Is that right?
Do I have one?
I think we have a meeting on Wednesday this week for the agenda setting, so we'll get it back on there.
I did have one item.
Okay.
I wanted to ask Kurt, at the tree committee, they looked at some funds that were available for tree planting. Is there something that we need to schedule here in the future just for allocating some money for tree planting with the tree committee? Or are they going to make a motion to have it come forward?
It was discussed, but no conclusions.
No conclusions? Okay. So you may want to mention to them at the next committee meeting to make, if they want to plant some trees, to make a motion and have it come forward to us.
As I recall, they were asking for everybody to go out and look for places.
Great. Thank you.
Vanessa.
From our strategic plan, I would like us to have a discussion about designating a portion of tourism lodging tax dollars to fund projects and promotions. This was a request from COPA.
Okay. Tourism lodging tax for what again?
COPA, Committee of Public Art.
Oh, no, for, you said discussing allocating a portion of the tax to be used for?
To fund projects and promotions.
Projects and promotions, okay.
Mayor, we may be able to just incorporate that into my presentation on April 11th with regards to Art Along the Rogue and Holiday Tree location and event, because it's mirrored with,
That seems appropriate.
In addition, on that topic, Tourism Advisory has pretty much that exact same topic on their next agenda, so there might be some input from them for that meeting as well.
Perfect. Anything further? Make sure DJ, okay. How about a motion to adjourn? Vanessa?
I move to adjourn.
Thank you. Second from Brian. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, see you next week.